In this episode, we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of a film about a man's struggle with his own mortality, connecting with his estranged son, finding the joy in his career again, losing his best friend, and oh yeah, being chased around the galaxy by an old and quite angry nemesis. All this and more awaits you in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric Kuber.
Hello.
There he is. Greetings and salutations, sir.
Yes, and welcome our very special guests.
We've got
talk about this very special film.
110th appearance of Nick Leshi.
Nick Leshi,
I believe.
111, I think.
Writer, actor extraordinaire.
He's done it all and making his first appearance with us. His first. So let's move Nick to the side. Put sweet Nick under the rug because we've got Roland Uruci.
Your old hat.
Roland Uruci, welcome aboard.
Hello.
Permission to board.
Thank you.
How are you doing? I should have loaded up a whole bunch of sound effects. I really should have done, right?
Yeah.
It's just not in the budget.
I know.
It's not there.
You would have to pay Gene Roddenberry's widow.
It never is.
I'm sure somebody from CBS or Paramount. He used the phaser sound.
No, that's not going to happen. No,
it's a reverse toaster. You have to pay us.
So thank you guys for joining us for a very special episode. We're going to be geeking out about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It's the 40th anniversary. Literally, the recording of this episode, we missed it by about a week. So if you're into the whole kismet of doing it on the day, we came pretty close. We pulled it together pretty quick though too. Roland kind of came on board. He's like, I'm ready the next couple of Mondays. I'm like, well, how about next Monday? He's like, yeah.
Perfect. And if you go by the Julian calendar, we're set. I mean, we're good.
We'll just go by the Star Trek. What is the star date anyway? We should have found out what the star date was.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Does anybody really have that nailed down? By the way, the star date.
Apparently legit. I mean, there really is some method to it. I consider myself a Trekker, but I have no idea how that works. But apparently, it's all has some rhyme and reason.
I thought I had it with Next Generation because they seem to be. The original series was like, no, I have no idea. They're
just all over the place.
Throwing numbers is all over the place. But Next Gen seemed to have some kind of continuity, some kind of pattern to it. I think it went by the seasons. Actually, they kind of incorporated that in there. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know. I kind of lost it after a while.
Well, you won't have to worry about keeping time with us because. If you get lost, you can find us on social media. We're at 3324 Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. So find us there. Go check it out. You can see a lot of great stuff there. We do live shows every other week. We're kind of there as well, putting ourselves out there for public ridicule and scrutiny. Yeah, that's okay as well. But but we're gonna get right into this one because we got a lot of ground to cover. This is just the story of this movie too, just about how it got made is almost as compelling as the great story that it is. So let me roll the stats like I normally do, and then we'll just get onto the transporter pods and beam ourselves up. So this was released June 4th of 1982, directed by Nicholas Meyer, and this was only his second film, and his first film was one of my favorites, which is Time After Time. With Malcolm McDowell, very small cult film. Mary Steenburgen, it was their first film together. They ended up getting married. A great film. Anyway, $12 million budget. What? Okay.
Yeah.
And a $97 million box office return on investment. So I think it did pretty well for itself, all things considered. Did everybody here see the Star Trek the Motion Picture? Not necessarily when it came out, but just generally.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Roland, what do you think? Was it a little too esoteric, Roland, or would like in comparison with this? We're not going to stay on the first one too long, but I think we need to talk about that contrast.
Well, I think that was like reinventing the world, sort of, and they were pushing a lot of that with the motion picture, where the Klingons come in differently. I remember as a kid seeing it in Brighton Beach. I remember the theater I saw it in, actually. So we're in Brighton Beach in one of the theaters right off the L over there, and I remember being shocked about how they changed sort of the visual elements of it. And this was more story focused. When I was watching this again, watch it twice, just to see him go Khan, and that was his, it's kind of weird. I have all kinds of jokes to say about that expression, but seeing how they went back very much to the rhythm of the shows, even though it's an extended format, but the rhythm, the music, all that stuff that leads up to it is very much an episode. It was really like almost like a TV. TV show of the week, very special episode, Star Trek, where you find out that, Kirk and Spock loved each other. And it was just, it's very emotional.
Romance. I think you unpacked a lot there, Roland, because, the original Star Trek, the motion picture, was kind of a response to Star Wars, even though they were trying to get a TV series off the ground again. They were trying to kind of reboot that. Star Wars comes in and just annihilates the science fiction community. So, they're like, okay, we got to get this up and running. Let's kind of get it going. But yeah, it was Star Trek, in almost in name only, Eric. I mean, right. It was kind of like, very, very heady, very, not what they were trying to be more sci-fi and trying to be more serious. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yeah. I think it was, Gene Roddenberry had this idea, I think that was actually what they used was the pilot for the series, for the second series. And they didn't bother to flesh it out. They only had so much story to tell in a 1 hour episode. I guess it would have been the premiere or the pilot. And they had to expand upon that. So there's a lot of just long, very, I think Robert Wise is a very esteemed director, directed it. He did The Day the Earth Stood Still. So he's no stranger to sci-fi. But bringing it in, bringing that on and making it trying to be too I think they were trying to get 2001 with it.
Absolutely.
Trying to be more, the meaning and, I like the sci-fi aspect. I like the idea of the discovery aspect, facing the unknown kind of thing. I just wish that the acting and the characterizations were matched that, because it would have made it for a much greater film had they brought in the personalities from the TV show into it, and really, it just would have made it. It was a totally different tone. The acting was horrible. I don't know why. I mean, these guys are, they've worked together before. It's not like they,
I just don't think
why it was so leaden and so
you can have a great director. You could put in Robert Wise, but. And admittedly, even with Trek 2, a lot of the people that ended up coming onto the project were not really fully aware of Star Trek and what it was. And Nick, I think where, the jump between 1 and 2 is pretty jarring. Like you had this one thing that was very heady and very kind of, like the long shots of the Enterprise. It takes 5 minutes to kind of get down the whole thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Taking forever. But then all of a sudden Nick, we get to 2. And it's much more bang bang and much more kind of really like Roland was saying, more closer to the spirit of an episode, which is not a bad thing for Star Trek.
And I think what really made Star Trek 2 the beloved movie that it became is the story and the characters, those two together. There really was a plot to Star Trek 2 that I think Star Trek the Motion Picture really missed. They tried for a long time after the 1960s series. I think they wanted to make another series. I think, Eric, you touched upon that. They really wanted to make Phase 2, I think is what they called it. They wanted to launch the Paramount Network back then. And then when Star Wars came out, they were like, oh, let's just make this into a movie. Let's bring everybody and make a film. And what Roland said, it was, they changed the outfits, they redesigned the Enterprise. And then instead of making it like Star Wars, they really went, I think, for a 2001 vibe, like you mentioned, Eric. And it was kind of slow paced. People look back at it now and I think it, they like it more than, originally, people criticized it for. But Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan was the one that kind of was like, this is it. This is what everybody loved about the original series. It had kind of campy action, but it was a Western in space. It had that kind of, militaristic, kind of like that episode Balance of Terror where they found the
submarine
warfare. Mm-hmm. So it really was almost like a bottle episode. They didn't hop from planet to planet or have super duper special effects. It was like this kind of drama with characters. I don't think Khan and Kirk shared any on stage screen time. Like they
No,
weren't
they
in the
actually
same
didn't
set,
have no
right?
scenes together.
But
And
their
you would never
dynamic
know, or
great.
you would never miss that, right?
Exactly, because
that's a
so much
glaring
drama.
thing. Usually there's a showdown, you know, the hero and the villain, you know, duke it out or do something. These guys shared no screen time together, and you almost don't notice unless someone points it out to you. And again, the movie is just written so well that you don't even ding them for it. Nobody be like, oh, they didn't get together. They didn't, you know, it's like, you're not even dinging them for it because this was so well executed. Let me give just a little bit behind the scenes of the run up to Trek 2, because I think it's kind of important. Gene Roddenberry was trying to get himself more involved in it. And his beautiful, wonderful idea for Trek 2 was go back to 1963 and have Spock assassinate Kennedy. Because they did something with time, and the only way they could fix it was to kill Kennedy, and Spock was going to be the assassin. At that point, right. Paramount says, Mr. Roddenberry, you'll be a creative consultant. We really don't need that kind of idea right now. Right. So they kind of pushed him to the side, and he's just a grumpy bastard anyway.
That's what to say. Get off my lawn moment. It's like, Lord, and these young punks buying sodas in front of my house.
So he was none too happy about it. And then what happened is once they had the script finalized, and they gave it to all the people, they were afraid, because of the death of Spock, they were afraid of leaks. So what they did for each script is they made just some typos, different typos on each script. So if the script got leaked, they would know by looking at the typo who leaked it. So the script got leaked, and people were flipping out. You can't kill Spock. How dare you? Da da da. So they get a copy of the leaked script, and who leaked it? Mr. Gene Roddenberry leaked it.
Yeah, he apparently was
he was just not too happy about his treatment during this time.
He was very very difficult to work with. The guy just would not budge on his ideas, and writers were always frustrated with him, especially the writers for Next Generation. They were always at odds with the guy, and you cannot write perfect people all the time, where there's, he believed there's no problems, there's no conflict. People would not behave this way in the 23rd century or whatever. And they're like, no, people are still human beings
then it's
at
dull.
that time. It just gets dull. And there's
it's probably a control thing too. I mean, when you're that long and you're revered and you're doing the circuit, I mean, that's probably part of the reboot too, where, they had this great, certain members of that community, Shatner, Roddenberry, they were revered. Everybody else was sort of held back. That might have been also why when people came back, they weren't that happy. It was a paycheck for them. Yeah. So some people might have felt it was just a paycheck and they didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to be stuck and pigeonholed in those roles. But this one, I mean, watching it again twice and really enjoying it and just seeing the acting. Yeah, there's some things I don't know why they're there. But that's just me and my critique of actors. But Ricardo Montalban, seeing him act, is just it's a masterclass. I'm like, son of a bitch, really how do you make every scene so good? And you're just doing stop. No. What was that line? He goes, you can give me nothing, and I am here to give you nothing. Yeah. I'm like, bro, you just told him to F himself in a PG movie. And you did it with suave style. You son of a bitch.
The amazing thing about Ricardo Montalban, too, at the same time, is he was still doing Fantasy Island. Yeah. So he was already typecast and pigeonholed as Mr. Rourke, the white suit, having his arms out, welcome. And he's got to pivot, so this movie really could have come off as just ultimate cheese. Yeah. Because you're getting a TV, again, we talked about it in some of our other episodes where TV actors didn't make those leaps to motion pictures. Yeah. And especially someone like Ricardo Montalban, meaning in a show that's so schmaltzy, Fantasy Island. I'll tell you, I thought those muscles were real. It wasn't until a few years ago.
Yeah, that's a big joke.
Some people are arguing that it was real. There's still
I did not. It was only a few years ago that I found out that was a prosthetic. Because I'm like, this guy. I wish at his age. Nipples. I hope I'm looking like that.
He would have had nipples. He would have had nipples.
That's if Joel Schumacher was directing it. It definitely would have been nipples in there.
Well, according to Nick Meyer, he said it was real.
That's what I'm saying. There's been some debate about it. There's been some debate that it's.
I don't know.
Yeah, he said his chest is absolutely real.
I remember his interview
on
Johnny Carson, and Ricardo Montalban said it was real. I remember that interview.
Yeah, I know.
remember that episode.
I don't know. It's one of the things we will never.
It is a weird
mysteries of cinema.
Yeah.
It most certainly is, especially like you say that there's those, when he's fiddling with the worm or whatever, and and he's like turning to the camera, and there is no like, where's his chest going? Like,
it's a little bit.
There's no nipple there. There's like, what?
It ends right where
it does look kind of fake, but
it would have worked for the
real.
battle
I don't know.
of Network Stars.
I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah, right.
That
he because you know what, he wears like that. He wears like a necklace, and I think that's like that. I think that hides like the line.
The line.
Where the prosthetic is, because that necklace doesn't move, and it's always kind of right in place. So
I was thinking the same thing actually when I was watching.
Yeah, it's. I think it's just a couple of other behind the scenes things. They reused. They said we'll make another Trek movie, but we got to make it for less. So Harv Bennett comes in as a producer, and he goes, less than 44 million. He goes, I can make 3 films for less than 44 million. So the fact that they reduced this budget to like a paltry $12 million is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So what they did is they reused a lot of Trek footage, some of the shots of the Enterprise in the dock, in the docking bay and stuff like that. Really got economical with it. One final tidbit, the original working title of this was The Undiscovered Country. Oddly enough, which would be the title of Trek 6.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the even number Treks later. The myth of the even number Treks, of whether or not they're better or not. So let's just break down the cast first, on the off chance that someone doesn't know about this. So you've got the great, of course, William Shatner in the lead as Captain Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as Spock, DeForest Kelley as Bones, which is like the Trinity, the swagger, the emotion, and the logic. I've always thought that those 3 characters make one perfect person, but it's almost like one person split into 3. And that's why they really need each other. Is, Bones has that compassion, especially when the scene with Genesis, we're, talking Universal Armageddon, green blooded, he just starts going, he's always going to look from that
little racist against
from that, he just went, he went ham on him, as he always does.
Yeah, he always does.
And Spock's like, whatever, this is logical. It's going to rewrite the Matrix. It's going to, if you explode Genesis on a live planet, it's going to, he has no opinion on it, but Bones just always gets so agitated. And then of course Kirk is the swagger and is the heart of the 3, and he needs the logic of Spock to kind of balance him out.
Well, I like to think that, according to Nicholas Meyer too, I think he even said it. I was watching some of the features, on the Blu-ray. What's a Blu-ray, right, guys? I mean, I know advent of physical media. I'm a big physical media buff, but he said that Kirk has both those qualities, and he does look to both of them when he's losing one side to the other. Like if the situation calls for more passion, he'll refer to Bones, and if it's, just to get himself out of it, I gotta think of this. I gotta get, the logical way. Spock is always right, in that sense. So, but it's a great dynamic, and so.
And rounding out the cast, James Doohan as Scotty, Walter Koenig as Chekhov, George Takei as Sulu, Nichelle Nichols as Uhura, and that's your classic cast right there. And then supporting them is Bibi Besh as Carol Marcus, great actress. Her daughter is Samantha Mathis, who's an actress in her own right. Yeah. You've got Merritt Buttrick as David, David Marcus. Yeah. Paul Winfield as Terrell.
He was great.
Introducing Kirstie Alley as Saavik. So this is her first role. And then, of course, Ricardo Montalban. Now, there's one weird thing that happened. There's a character in here, Joachim or Joachim, however you pronounce it, who's like Khan's right-hand man.
Yeah,
looks like Tommy Shaw.
He's got significant screen time. He is not listed in the credits.
That's weird.
Really?
Yeah. What happened is he was in a lot of TV shows in the 70s. So he went to his agent and said, you know what, you got to get me in like in the opening credits. And they're like, you're not going to get in with like Shatner and them. So he said to his agent, all right, okay, leave me out of those credits. Paramount thought, leave me out of the credits entirely. So they just didn't credit him.
That's so terrible.
Wow.
I hope he still got his royalty checks or whatever.
Yeah.
He got paid, but I was looking, I'm like, who's it? What's this guy's name?
I remember him on all
he's
TV
not in the
shows.
credits.
Yeah. He's a big, like, eight is enough, friggin' Love Boat sort of guy.
Yeah,
he has one of those faces that
Judson Scott is his name for everybody that sees him and doesn't know. We need to credit him now. I think
he has a great death scene. Great death scene.
And he's also the voice of reason too to Khan. Yeah. He's he has a significant role in the sense that he is the foil. He's trying to tell him, convince him, look, you're getting a little out of control here, and Khan's not listening. He's not having it. That's no minor role.
There's an interesting dynamic with those two characters. I was even the timeline 16 years, but it just feels weird. They both have sons that are like 35 years old. But Kirk's son, I was like, David, I'm like, oh my God, he's his son, but the kid's like 35. But and I was thinking that also on the other side that maybe even that was Khan's sort of maybe adopted son or something. There was definitely an emotional attachment. So you're absolutely right, Eric. There was that's a big role. He's the anchor for Khan throughout the whole thing. He's looking towards him. He's confused. He's looking for guidance towards him. He's looking for that shoulder. With that other character. And
there's one great scene towards the end because Khan basically overrules him for fire this, that. Yeah. They go into the Motara Nebula and he says, listen, the shields aren't going to work.
Right.
And Khan's like, raise the shields. And he's like, no, they're not going to work. I told you so. Yeah. So then he slows down the ship and Khan's like, why are you slowing down? And he looks at him and he just, he doesn't even he gives it a double take and then he just doesn't say anything. I'm not going to bother arguing at this point.
That's right.
It's funny because he just kind of slowed down. He's like, why are we slowing down? And he's just like, forget it.
I told you. I thought we talked about this.
He's like, forget. He's like, So that was the funny where Khan just accepted something from somebody without usually he fights back and this he just was like
definitely that is a great and it stands out that scene. It really does because even Khan gets very lazy in this chair and he pulls back. He sort of gives up to that that advice. He takes it. He's okay. We're done. Let's just move on.
It's one of the wonderful things about this script is there's a lot of little subtle layers to it, like the fact that Khan has someone that is so completely loyal to him and that'll follow him anywhere, and and he says that he goes, we'll follow you anywhere. We'll do we'll die for you. But you're going out of control here. And then you have Kirk and his son. His son wants something to do with him.
Right.
He wants to kill him. He hates his guts. He doesn't know him. He's he wasn't there. So there's an interesting contrast there, between the characters. So
nice try with David. You come at Kirk with a knife, he's going to karate chop you.
Yeah, obviously.
He does the same move. When he swung the knife, Kirk does a little backup.
A little short
chop. He kind of dodges. He kind of dodges it, and then he gives him a chop and a hit. Don't come at him with a knife. You got to bring something better.
It was just such a subtle, just like a
little pocket. It was a little pocket knife. Yeah, what are you going to do with that?
It's pretty funny.
Don't you know who your dad is? He's going to kick the crap out of you. As far as he didn't do the body throw when he dives on people sideways. Kirk.
I wanted the 2-foot kick. I want his 2 foot against the guy. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Butt kick in that episode where he hits the guy with his ass. Remember that? And then he gets stabbed right in the kidney. Bad move. Bad move, Kirk.
He's got a lot of close combat skills, Kirk. So don't come at him with a little penknife that you're cutting your fruit open with. So
for the Gorn, I mean, come on, man, you can't.
What's his son gonna do?
Exactly.
His son's like, oh, you killed everybody. He's so whiny. It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
even his mother's like, David,
he's
stop
definitely.
You're doing it again, David. You're doing it again.
David, he's not. David, he didn't do that.
You're just making this harder.
Oh, David, you're a doctor. Act like one.
Yeah, come on, David, stop whining. You built Genesis, and you're complaining. You killed everybody.
That was he was a bit whiny. Yeah, he was the eye candy. I think he was the eye candy. It didn't work.
Yeah, well, you know what? He grew on me towards the end. I'm kind of like, okay,
Yeah,
he had a tough job of being conflicted and angry, but then at the end, you got that little Field of Dreams moment where they kind of tentatively hug.
Yeah, that was
even both of them.
That was a strong hug. That's a strong hug. Yeah. It's like I said, it is a very an excellent extended episode of like a TV moment. I actually enjoyed watching it at home. I know the TVs have gotten bigger, but I actually enjoyed watching it. Not every movie I can watch at home, without I got to take a break. So there's great moments, and the acting is that is the story. They tried to keep the tempo. They kept the tempo really in lockstep with the show. So I think that was great trying to get there. They couldn't be Star Wars, and they knew that. Yeah. And I think I make this sort of difference with like Marvel and DC. Marvel does great worldview projects. DC does great hometown projects. You know, Marvel excels at saving the world. DC excels at saving grandma down the block.
Yeah.
And the same thing is with Star Trek, where it is when it's very tight and it's a small location and they know the goal right then and there, it excels. Star Wars is, you know, we have to get a rebellion. I don't know how many people died. Let's get some weird shit that we got to climb into if it dies in the snow. You know, that's it. You know, it's worldview. No one's really investing what's going on because it's a big world.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek is a very small world. And that's what excels.
Exactly, Roland. It's important for Star Trek to play to their strengths, which they didn't do in the first movies. They were trying to be something else, but as soon as someone figured out, we got to kind of bring this down. And Nick, I was thinking about it a lot. The travesty of this film is that the story and all these elements, like I said in the open, right? I described it as not as a science fiction film, but as a film about a guy who's questioning the fact that it says Star Trek on it is going to immediately turn people away because they think it's one thing. But I think this film really just stands out as its own story. And I hope people will give it a chance that are not Trek fans, you know, because I think they did something with this where it deals with all these different themes. And it's, even though it's Trek, it's not Trek-y.
Right.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean,
definitely.
Just it's like episodic, right? The beats, the story beats really almost felt like this is where you're going to, a cliffhanger right before a commercial or something. There was like about 5 of them throughout, you know, it's like a little twist or a little turn. And that's what I think kept this going and made it so popular. And I love the dynamic between Khan and Kirk, right? The revenge aspect of it, right? Like Khan is reading Moby Dick and Kirk is reading A Tale of Two Cities, right? And at the, you know, the death scene that we talked about, right? When Khan's, you know, son figure, right, dies, he goes, I will avenge you. But it was Khan who, his obsession with going after Kirk that led to that death, right? And then the sacrifice that Spock makes at the end, he's sacrificing himself to save the others, whereas Khan pretty much, you know, killed his whole crew just because he had to go after Kirk.
Yeah,
so
it was all collateral damage.
Story, that could have been a Western. That could have been, you know, a cops and robbers story. That could have been anything, but it's set in space. It's Star Trek. And that's what always worked with the series too. You know, that you had gangster episodes and you had Western episodes and you had, you know, people in togas. It's like they always managed to take just these generic stories and make them really fit and tell some kind of moral tale, which was great. You know, it was very, Gene Roddenberry was very much like, you know, Rod Serling with, you know, the Twilight Zone, using this format to tell these epic stories, you know?
And let's not forget Spock and Savik's relationship there too. Is like, he is the instructor. He is the mentor to a very interesting character. I always thought, fortunately, they had to Kirstie Alley. I think she wanted too much money to return in Star Trek 3.
She'd come back because she was so great.
They said sorry,
and I'll go even further and to say that I think the character in 6,
Valeris,
it should have been Savick.
I've said
that was the one thing about 6 that I didn't like, that it was that character was a brand new character. That
was basically Savick.
That would have been made such a better impact if it had been Savick, because that relationship she has with Spock, because of this film, and you know, because he's there from the very beginning with her, and you know, so there's that almost like father-daughter type relationship happening too. So it's a lot about family. It's a lot about mortality. There's a lot of things really going on in this film that you don't really see, you know, because you're looking at it like almost like a B movie type thing with, you know, with weird alien backgrounds and much like the TV show, but those themes really show through, and that's all due to the characters. And it's a testament to those characters that really draws out everything, even the most sci-fi elements. And they talk about Genesis and the way they describe it. They don't need to have like this big fancy special effect thing, even though this was the very first film to employ CG effects. That the Genesis effect was the very first CG shot ever in the film.
Yeah, Tron would follow it the same year, but not right away. And the company that did the CG is actually Pixar, it was the company that would become Pixar. Mm-hmm. So they were like a group of guys, working for Lucasfilm, and then they would eventually morph into Pixar, I think in the mid '80s. So they were on top of that. Just to go back to Star Trek 6, though. with Valeris, we get the great Kim Cattrall though in that role. So I just needed to acknowledge her. She was really great. She was really great in that role. She was so good in it.
But it should have been
really good,
character.
but it should have been Savick, the character. I don't understand why they wrote her out of that arc, like that story.
Well, she was gone for so many films, right? Her last film was Star Trek 3, so it's kind of like in the dust, get somebody else in. But there's a lot of themes there.
Role in 4 too, but
what's that?
I think she did have a small role in 4 because that was all part of the Spock trilogy.
Oh, in the very beginning, right? When they were on Vulcan.
But I think it was alluded to the fact that because they had relations in Star Trek 3, when Spock is going to Ponfar on the Genesis planet, it was written. I think they had a draft where Savick actually gets pregnant, and that's why she stays behind on Vulcan in Star Trek 4. Like they leave her behind because she's there with Spock's mother and she's bearing Spock's child. But they didn't go anywhere with that.
Let's leave
that was an earlier thing.
Better left. I don't want to know Spock. I don't want to look at Spock that way. I want to look at him as solitude, majestic, worldly, knowledgeable, not changing diapers and doing that kind of
Yeah.
I want him stoic and all the things that we know about Spock. On a geeky note, this was the debut of the new uniforms that they would keep through Star Trek 6. So they got rid of, the first movie kind of had those weird kind of everyone's
pajamas.
In a jumpsuit, very drab and just kind of weird. This they went with more of a naval and military look, and I think it suited it. I liked that they kept it throughout the next 4 films. Kind of they weren't jumping all over the place, trying different things, seeing what was going to stick. They kind of said, okay, here it is, and let's kind of build the world.
Yeah, that was all Nick Meyer. He brought that in, that nautical feel, like the old school, and I love the idea that certain traditions stayed throughout. This is Starfleet. It's still somewhat of a militaristic, function, or it's a tool for the Federation. That nautical life still, even after like a Third World War, and there's still traditions that live on. And I love that. And even in the world, it's like every naval tradition is pretty much the same, all over the world. So it's like a different life. You're on the sea. That is a whole life. And I just love that. I love stories about that to begin with. So, and
they carried that through to next gen as well. The same theories. Roland, the movie starts off with like Kirk's birthday and this kind of like almost like crisis of conscience that it's his birthday, and he makes a comment to Bones. He says, hop in the stars is a thing for young people,
for the young kids,
game for the young. And it kind of sets the tone where Kirk is not the normal Kirk that we see, where he's got the swagger and bravado and nothing. We're seeing someone that's a little bit more raw and a little bit more affected by what he perceives as sailing off into the sunset. When you leave a ship, and even though you're going into higher command, you're kind of being put out to pasture.
No, definitely. Yeah. No, I picked up on that right away. I mean, he's wearing glasses, which a lot of people don't wear glasses. He has to because he's allergic to the medication to do corrective, corrective eye injections, I guess. But it was very interesting. Watching that, seeing him so fallible, and again, we're going back to the original concept, and we're talking about even the nautical theme of how these are alone people. Their love is travel, their love is space, their love is the ship. And that plays along where he wants his last days. I mean, Bones at one point goes, "Get your command back," and he goes to bring him that liquor in his room, and he goes, "Get your command back." Essentially that's the only thing that's going to keep you alive because you're miserable like this. Yeah. This is not where you need to be, and it is keeping into that tone of nautical life where we're alone. No one talks about their spouses, or he has a love child essentially, but he doesn't really have a wife or anything. She decided, you're doing your thing. I took care of my son because you would never care about your family. And you have Khan on the other side who's very family oriented, two-dimensional thinker, as Spock points out, but he's very family oriented. He's a genius, but he can't really get past a lot of insecurities. So it's a weird. He keeps bringing up his wife.
He keeps bringing up the death of his wife, Khan.
Right,
right. Meanwhile, you left her.
He's an elevated intellectual person, and he can't get his head around that. Why he's alone now? Why he only has he was a king. He's like, I was a king. I had thousands of people review
Prince,
me, and now I got 20 people. Prince, now I have 20 people looking at me, and they're they look like the precursor to cats. They're all in rags and
yeah, and it's.
I thought it was gonna be a Fosse dance at one point. Oh my God, it's gonna be a Fosse dance.
They're gonna start snapping their fingers,
jazz hands, and just going through. I was like,
Chicago. They're gonna.
That would have been amazing. Chicago, 23, 24.
The scene that you talk about with Bones, where he says "Get your command back," is prefaced by one that even sets the tone too, where Spock, is saying, "Oh, nothing except happy birthday," and he's like, and then Spock's like, "Where are you going? Where are you going to go?" And he said it so. I felt so bad. Kirk's like, "Home."
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere. Like he's got nowhere to go. It's like he's got nothing. He's nothing without like his ship and his command is really is who he is, and he even feels that, right? Because he said it just so. I felt so. He's like home. Like where else am I going to go?
There's a lot of dialogue that sprinkles like that. Like even with the book President, I know you love antiques. Showing his age, showing his locked way. He feels like an antique. There's a lot of that. Even when after the failed attempt by Kirstie Alley, and he goes, "Oh, Spock, I thought you were dead." I mean, that's a little bit of a hey,
foreshadowing.
Tongue in cheek. Those moments. But there's a lot of that of him feeling like an antique, like he's out of step with what's out there, and he's taking the shuttle. He's the old guy. He's the old guy showing up and just making sure everything's okay.
He's like, we're going to go on this 3-week training mission. And, the thing about the movie too is,
and there's continuity there too. Cause if you look back to the motion picture, what happened to Spock and his journey, right? He was supposed to go through, the Vulcan ritual or whatever to purge all remaining emotion. And that didn't work out. So now he's back with Starfleet. So they didn't like just totally ignore those aspects of that story, the character moments of the motion picture. Kirk is still an admiral, but he got the Enterprise back for that one specific mission. Now he's back to, pushing papers at a desk. So they didn't like just totally ignore all that and just, say the first movie was a total dud. They did draw upon those little character moments. I thought that was really cool. Like, and a lot of the films they do that. The continuity factor is very, very well done, I think. With these characters.
And the thing about this film too is it's actually running in parallel because Kirk and Khan. I'm so used to saying Kirk and Spock. Everyone's so used to Kirk and Spock. Kirk and Khan don't actually meet until about 50 minutes into a 2-hour film. So there's a lot of building up to this where you're seeing what Khan, like what the machinations Khan is putting into place of trying to find Genesis and using Terrell and Chekhov to kind of put his plan into motion, and then you just see Kirk as a pawn in this, not realizing. He's going on the training mission, not realizing he's going to be pulled into this. And then I think I paused it like when their first scene was like 48 minutes or 49 minutes. And then the movie's like on, right? It's like kind of the first 50 minutes is like world building. They're laying it in. You see that, Kirk is sad. He's depressed. He's, not happy. And then he gets kind of pulled in and kind of has to shake the rust off, right? Because he gets caught, Reliant is coming and just kind of sailing in and not responding to hails. And, then the shields go up. And by that point, it's too late. It's like, oh, here we go.
That was a great moment. That was a great moment, though.
Yeah.
Because
he kind of lost his edge a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he said that. He's, they were like, "Hey, you did it." He goes, "I did nothing. I got caught with my pants.
Caught my britches down."
Right. Yeah. Literally. And they're britches. They're like pantaloons. So So that's an interesting point you made.
And there's a lot of great lines in there too, because after he got over the shock of seeing Khan, Khan's like, "Oh, I'll give you 60 seconds and whatever." And he's like, Khan's like, "Oh, Captain." He's like, "Khan, we're getting a Khan." Like he's just talking to him like regular, like, hold on, Khan. Like it's coming. Like he just goes into like normal conversation mode. Like he's over like the shock of seeing him. He's like, so it's just kind of like only Shatner could kind of balance those kind of lines and just kind of throw them off. And it's like,
you totally hit
the glasses. Like it's coming, Khan. You
totally hit that on the head because, you need that because otherwise Khan would be, his monologuing type thing going on and on and on, and you need somebody like Kirk to kind of cut that in half, so that it's such a great, you're right. Absolutely right about that.
It's like just some of those throwaway lines, and then which I love. And then the other one is, I'm laughing at the superior intellect. He totally stung Khan. Like after Khan thought he was dead, he goes, I'm laughing at the superior intellect. Cause that's what Joachim or whatever said at the end. He goes, yours is the superior intellect. It's like, no, not really. You think he was clouded by his obsession. Nick, do you have any favorite lines or any favorite things that kind of jump out?
There's so many. I love the line with Spock when Sava comes up and she finds out that they were playing around with a timeline. It was all coded. So when they said an hour, they meant a day and all that stuff, right? She looks at Spock and goes, "You lied." And he just looks and goes, "I exaggerated." Like
I exaggerated.
That was one of the great ones.
You can logic your way out of anything.
There's so many great lines by all of them, by Khan and Kirk and McCoy, and
very well written.
So it's the kind of movie where you'll remember it, and if you see it in a big theater with a lot of fans, they'll be screaming them back at the screen when it happens.
Do they have Star Trek marathons? Like, do they have where they show all of them?
Sometimes they do,
right?
Like, I know at the Alamo,
they may have done it at the Alamo in the early days on Central Avenue in Yonkers, New York. For those that are not in the area,
I could not picture anybody but Ricardo Montalban being that character.
He was fantastic.
And that's a great sign. That's a sign of a great movie to me. When I can picture no one else. I don't care who did it originally. I can picture no one else delivering those lines the way he delivered those lines.
That's what I miss about Trek in general. Is the new Trek, you love it or hate it, whatever whatever. But I miss those very prestigious acters. Yeah, unfortunately, all gone now. I mean, these real like stage and screen actors. These all through all the shows they made probably their final appearances or close to it. Mark Leonard, who played Sarek. He was the only Sarek for me. We met him at a convention. I remember when we went to see the one with Shatner. I actually
for Star Trek V.
Such a warm soul. He just seems like such a gentle soul. And ever since then, he's always been Sarek, even though the character himself didn't really show up all that often. That relationship between him and Spock has always been very special to me throughout the years. Like, anytime you see Leonard Nimoy and him together playing that, and even carried over into Next Generation, that beautiful episode where Sarek has dementia, like a Vulcan version of dementia. He's got a mind meld with Picard to save the mission, so they could stabilize his negotiating skills and all. Such a beautifully done acting. It's just, I miss that. I miss those type of actors. Nothing against a lot of the younger, generation of actors that are coming in now, but it's just like they all have their own way of delivering lines, and it's just, you miss that. Right. That more
those guys were pros,
theatrical.
Mark Leonard was a veteran of TV, so he was always working in television. And to what Roland said about Ricardo Montalban, he just had a swagger and a confidence about his character. Like Khan was just like almost got activated as soon as he heard that Kirk was alive. It was almost like he now had purpose in life. Like they were just trying to stay alive on that planet. And once he heard Kirk was alive, all of a sudden he's like, I have a motivator in my life. Now it turned out to be revenge and obsession, but like when the Reliant has the Enterprise crippled, he is so in control of it, right? He's like, it's you're at my mercy, and I'm gonna. And then when they're marooned inside the planet, and Khan gives that speech too. I'm going to leave you as you left me, buried alive, and the way you left her, and. Of course, we get the great, Shatner yelling into the little comm watch.
It's becoming
so. Let me ask you guys
Khan,
this.
you bloodsucker. Khan, you bloodsucker.
Okay, so what do you make of that scene? It's the most infamous meme, whatever. It's like, Khan. What do you make of that scene? Is he, it's a ploy, right? Do you agree? I mean,
Shatner,
the
I don't
character.
think so.
Kirk is acting. He is acting.
You think so?
Like he's in a bad situation. Yeah, absolutely, he's acting.
Yeah, he knows he's not stranded there because they've been using code all along. So there's more.
Right.
But he's
putting on an act. Like when he's going Khan, he's over the top because the character
I think
Kirk is acting. He's like, it's not just Shatner, overacting in that.
He knows he has
it's a blend of both. I think it's a combination of both. I think there's he knows he's not stranded, but he's also genuinely like, he's giving
it to Khan, letting Khan get the upper hand in that moment, thinking that he won, but then he's like, oh,
I can definitely see what you're saying,
I don't like to lose.
Eric, but I think also he wants to keep playing that game. Mm-hmm. And that is a thing for Kirk as well. He enjoys that battle, that those mental gymnastics that they.
Yeah, I think that's what it more was.
And I think yes, he knew he was getting out, but he didn't want to end. He wanted to control that moment with him, and maybe he lost it a little bit. Went a little bit over the edge.
Yeah, because he said you're going to have to cut. You're going to have to come down, right? Like that, like Roland's saying is like, because he's like, you're gonna have to come down and kill me. You keep hitting, you keep missing the target. And I think there was that. I think Kirk let the emotions get the better of him. I don't think that was acting. I think it was just more because then Khan is like, I don't have to. Because he said, I've done more than kill you. I've hurt you. Yeah. And I think that's what stung Kirk was like, like he's still getting the better of me. So even though he was getting out, he was like Roland said, they're kind of competing against each other for who's the better strategist, who's the most savvy. Yeah. And this time, Khan's like, I don't, I don't have to, I'm just going to leave you there. And if you get out, you get out. But if you don't because they still really didn't know, they were hoping that the Enterprise would be able to repair itself in hours instead of days. But I don't think that was a given. I think it was kind of, here's the plan. Yeah. But at that point, he was still kind of marooned, and it made for a better us thinking also that, oh my God, he's stuck in there. And
it was no matter how you slice it, it was effective either way. But you guys make great points, and then
his Khan is echoing out of the planet when they pull away into the planet. You're going, you still hear it?
Amazing, amazing. I was watching that, and I got a flashback of Total Recall where the Schwarzenegger takes off the mask of the woman with the hair. And
get ready for a surprise. It throws
oh my God.
That's a great one.
Just a great thing, and that whole the contrast between the two of and I think Roland mentioned it earlier about the when Spock said Khan's thinking is very linear or very two-dimensional. Right? So that you can know everything that there is to know, but if you don't put it into practical use, like Kirk does, like Kirk is able to. So all things being equal, they might be equal intellects, but Khan is still lacking just the battlefield smarts that Kirk has about punching, punching in and getting the code for the reline. He's like, I hope he hasn't figured that out yet, because they're giving him credit that Khan may be able to know that and change the key code, and they were hoping that he didn't. So there's there's the thing of knowing stuff, but then there's the other part of being able to put it into practical use, and that's where Kirk outclassed Khan is having the ships on different, that's when they talked about the two-dimensional thinking. You saw like the Enterprise above the reline. It wasn't just like a face-to-face duel, kind of shooting at each other.
And Spock would recognize that because in the original series, he was an expert at three-dimensional chess or whatever that game was.
This even plays into the maturity thing.
Yep.
This plays into the maturity thing of an immature person, very childlike, who hasn't had those life experiences, thinks in those ways. Somebody's a teenager, regardless of his beautiful hair and the chess piece. He hadn't lived a life that Kirk had. So there's only, there's also the essence of, the story being, you have the maturity to lead. He didn't have the maturity to lead. He was leading a lot of kids. Yeah. Really think about even the other cast. There were a lot of young people.
That's true.
Some solid gold dancers were there, I think. And they were I'm dating myself, but you should all look at me.
We're with you. We're with you.
Get the images. Just go on images, solid gold dancers. You'll thank me. But there's his crew were kids. They were effectively in their 20s. At least that's how they were portrayed. It's like Pat Benatar lookalikes. But it was. But then now Kirk had
love is a battlefield.
It is. Let's be honest here. It is, obviously, and you hug afterwards with somebody. But his maturity, again, talking about his an old man. It's for young people, and that's all that they're being pushed to. Hey, it's only for young people. But then this mature statesman. That's what he is. He's really a statesman and a general, an admiral, and he's pulling that story across. And he's even though he's caught off guard, he finds his footing, and that's the skill of a mature person. Khan never found his footing again.
Yeah.
Billy became more obsessed, which made him more susceptible to mistakes.
Yeah.
Because he became single-minded of, and even towards the beginning, what Joe Chim or whatever said, listen, we got out of the planet. Isn't that enough? Like we can go wherever we want and do whatever we want. Like
that's right.
No, it's not enough. Like I have it in for this guy, and I'm going to do what he needs to do. And that's where it started to cloud his judgment. It worked for a while. And then you get the great line with Kirk is like, we tried it your way, Khan. Now how about, and Khan's like, what the, his head kind of like had it it just shows that Kirk has never faced death and he would have eventually in the movie, but it also kind of, reinvigorated Kirk. And I think made him understand that like old age, he was like 50. Like if you tell me that's old age, we're sunk.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, right. But like that, and like Roland is saying, like there's the experience, and that has value, So it's not, just because it's, he thinks it's a young person's game jumping around the galaxy, not necessarily true, because all the experience that he has is valuable, and that was contrasted with Savick, right? Savick was quoting rules and regulations, but not really knowing how to use those rules and regulations, right? No encoded, transmissions, but she didn't realize that they were. He was using that rule,
that's right.
And leveraging it the right way. So at the end, when Carol says, "How do you feel?" and he's like, "I feel young," because I think he felt like validated and vital, and that he had something to still contribute. Yeah, that all that experience, even you don't get that by being young. You get that by having those adventures and going through things, and then you're able to use all that to get yourself out of these situations. If he wasn't there, they would have been, it would have been sunk.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the whole story, I think. I mean, that's how I'm seeing it. More as we discuss it, you sort of it's a great film that you can discuss.
The more this stuff does come out, and that's what makes it such a great film, and arguably the best Trek film.
I would certainly say it's
so absolutely,
Fans of the series love this one the most, probably.
And it was very divisive though in the beginning, right? Because of the death of Spock, which is a very powerful scene. I mean, it's just kind of. With Scotty's like, no, they're like holding him back. They're holding Kirk back. And there's actually like a third guy. When I watched the movie, I watched it twice also. And when Shatner and Kirk goes down to the radiation thing and McCoy and Scotty are holding, there's actually a third guy holding like Shatner by the waist. Like he's all just the top of his head.
Really nice.
Then he like leaves. He just like leaves the scene just so the three of them could be there. And Scotty's like, he's dead already. And it's like, oh man, it's just like,
it was a great
scene. That's a rough scene. That's a rough bit when he does that. It's really rough. I mean, no matter what it's rough.
Yeah, because it ties into the Kobayashi Maru, ties into that. It ties that into the beginning as well, where, an unwinnable situation that Kirk never had to face. And Spock said, I never took the Kobayashi Maru test, but this was his.
Yeah.
What do you
this
think
was
of my
his test, Yeah, exactly. So it's
sacrifice yourself to save the ship and the crew.
Yeah.
And there's a lot happening.
Eric, I teared up.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening. Even the kid that dies on the table too.
Yeah. Peter Preston.
In the original script, right? It's supposed to be Scotty's nephew, which
it is Scotty's nephew. Because if you watch, they actually put that back into the film in the director's cut, and there's that extra scene.
I wonder why he was so emotional.
Yeah, he's very emotional.
I did wonder,
which I never understood why Scotty he brings him to the bridge
while everybody ran.
He brings the kid to the bridge. Why are you bringing him to the bridge? Bring him to the sick bay.
Come on, guys, bleeding out. Get him off the bridge. That's a new bridge.
He's an engineer. He's not a doctor.
He takes him from engineering to the bridge, which is like all the way on the top.
Get lost.
Come on. You guys know IT guys. IT guy never goes to the hospital.
There's that reoccurring aspect of death.
Yeah,
we're constantly reminded that that death is apparent, and Kirk seems to weave his way around it throughout the film. He's just I've cheated death. And it's such a beautiful realization now that he has to face it because his best friend is.
And that's what I love about
and that's what makes it's so emotional. Yeah,
James Kirk. He's by the book. He has experience. He follows the rules, but at the same time, he breaks the rules. That's what I love about Captain Kirk. He's an Admiral Kirk now, right? It's like, it's those moments, that gut instinct that brings into it. You have to know, the rules, to follow them
before you could break them,
and then you can break them, right?
Yeah.
So that's that combination. I think he plays it really well, and he's one of the best science fiction characters, and I would say just adventure characters ever written. I just think,
and again, like when they tells him about the Kobayashi Maru, that plays an important role. Like the fact that they tell him that he cheated. It's not just a throwaway thing. It's not just Kirk cheated on a test. This has significance.
Yeah,
every little bit in this film has that bit of significance, and it ties into what happens.
Absolutely tied it all together.
He goes, I don't like to lose, then he just bites the apple. I mean, just like great drama, great. It's perfect.
Yeah, and then at the end, when he's given the eulogy of all the souls I've encountered in the universe, his was the most human.
His voice chokes up.
Kind of
love it.
He gets you.
Yeah, you know what? And for all the overacting and all the impressions that people, and that's the thing about this movie is if people look at the impressions of Kirk and Shatner, you're going to think that this movie is that, and it's probably the least of that, right? And that's why it's a sin that this is called Star Trek 2, because a lot of people will not watch it because of those preconceived notions, and you're just missing a great story.
That's right.
Like, it happens to take place in outer space. It just happens.
I wish they would. Yeah, I really wish that they would.
Like Nick said, it could be anywhere else. Like the Star Trek, series. It could be. You could transplant this into the West. You could transplant it into the business world.
Yeah.
You could transplant it, wherever, and it would fit. Because these themes are universal. They're not space specific themes that can only happen, out there. It's kind of the struggle is real in this one with Kirk of old age and friendships and dying and all that kind of stuff, which is. Again, just the fact that
Paramount would actually go back and take the numbers off the films, like just Star Trek Wrath of Khan, Star Trek Search for Spock.
They did it
eliminate the numbers entirely.
If they did that, we wouldn't know which ones were the even ones, and we wouldn't know which ones were good, right? So let's talk about that. I mean, so there's the legend or the myth, or maybe it's real that the even number Star Trek films are the better films, right? 2. The Voyage Home, 4, An Undiscovered Country. And then you have 1, which is the motion picture. You have 3, Search for Spock, which, Christopher Lloyd, is like Jim Ignatowski as a Klingon.
I like Star Trek 3.
I'm going to defend Search for Spock.
Too. Okay.
I absolutely love that film.
Who's going to defend Star Trek 5? Roland?
No.
You're gonna take up the mantle on that one or no?
I'll leave it alone.
What does God need a spaceship for, right?
I think we can make a case that the even ones are superior.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they are the better.
And I don't know why it worked out that way, but
I think 2, 3, and 4, what they call the Spock trilogy, this whole story arc, right? Yeah. I think Star Trek 3 is kind of berated unnecessarily, because I think like Eric said, there's some really good moments in that movie. I don't know if it was the budget. I don't know if it was recasting Savick. I don't know.
They got goofy looking. They're jumping from all these.
I love Christopher Lloyd. If anybody's going to follow Khan's scene chewing, Christopher Lloyd as the Vulcan, it's pretty good.
What really sold me on that film?
1 gigawatts.
You're crossing that threshold of total absurdity here.
It went back into camp.
But it was done with such heart and reverence, because the film in itself, by and large, is a very somber movie. It's not meant for camp. It's not meant for laughs.
Yeah,
they take it very seriously, the subject matter, despite the bigger budget, despite the whatever the camping special effects. That's what really brings it down a little bit. But man, the idea that Kirk is going to risk life and limb to just get an opportunity to save his soul, which he knows nothing about the the Vulcan mysticism, and he doesn't necessarily believe in it, but because it's his friend, he'll do it. He'll risk it.
In this one, in Star Trek 2, A Tale of Two Cities, it's like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And then in Star Trek 3, it's all about, he says it at the end, he goes, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many, right?
Well, what about David, though? Didn't he get knifed?
David dies.
Oh, that's why you threaten somebody with a knife. Someone's going to give you a knife, and David
had some sense.
He got the business end of the knife in this one.
And
when they carried through with that, though, which I liked, it was like they didn't pull any punches there. The Klingon, there was typically something would happen where he would he would live. But no, he got stabbed right in the back. They delivered on that threat, on that promise.
And that scene when Brooke hears that his son is dead, right? You talk about subtle acting. He just collapses and he's like, "You killed my son." I love it.
He falls off the chair.
Yeah, that's what gets
me. When he goes to sit down in his chair and he misses it and he falls.
You know?
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I haven't seen it enough. It's the one I don't really watch.
I'm gonna have to watch it again now.
Yeah,
because now you guys got me all thinking about it.
It's one that for the longest time nobody really ever talked about 3.
Yeah.
Everybody talks how bad 5 is, and
I think they felt it was like a gimmicky thing, to bring it back because people are upset. I mean, it's probably, like you said, like we said earlier, those 2 characters together are like so strong together, and people were missing that. But it makes sense though in this world, and these stories, especially these series, Star Trek original series. I don't have to go into after the Next Generation. It's like hit or miss for me on the series. But these movies, they have this flatness in a good way where they tell stories. And it's not about the glam. It's not about the effects. It's not about, people are jumping out of chairs during explosions. They look ridiculous. I'm like, I'm sorry. There's no way you should be jumping out of a chair.
Why do they put explosive items in the
everywhere
in the consoles?
In the training rooms. I'm like, why would you do that?
Can't Scotty fix that? Just take the explosives out of the consoles
concussion.
on the bridge.
Stop. But when you get to the stories, they go really, really well. And I think that's the heart of it, why they work, is that, and sometimes they hit or miss a little bit, but in comparison to the one before, and they adjust like life. They adjust the story, they correct it. They take a corrective measure.
Which they did with Trek 4, right? They kind of they pivoted towards a smaller story, and it was literally Kirk and Spock.
Yeah, but you have this great heartfelt stuff about it, where you're learning about these 3 people who interact constantly, and that's their life, that's their worldview. One of my rules of filmmaking is, why did God turn on the camera? Because a lot of shit's happening at the same time. I got to understand why God would say, "I'm going to pay attention for a minute." So and I think if you could tell a really good story, that's when God goes, "Oh, this is kind of interesting. Let me stay focused on this."
Putting a frame.
I'm not going to change anything. I'm obviously not going to help you, but I would like to see what happens. And I think these moments in these Star Trek, these films, this run, they stay true to form. They saw it from the first one. They effects weren't going to win people over, and they had and people had a respect to the storylines and the characters. It's like different. Like, I don't like Discovery, Star Trek Discovery. Nick knows it grates me after second season. It just grates me because it makes no sense to me.
Strange New World is pretty good.
Strange New World is truer to this, which I like.
I do enjoy. It's fun.
I do. Yeah,
it's fun.
More episodic.
It's episodic. There's different kind of learning curves for everybody. There's still my captain's Jesus. There's a little bit of that, but not as much as Discovery, where literally they're Jesus.
Yeah.
So that one just gets me. I can't.
Yeah, I did the first season as well, and then it was a mess. The second season, I checked out.
It started strong. It started really strong. And
it was really interesting.
But I liked the storyline, and then after that, like I'm the Red Angel, or I was like, oh my God, stop! I was like, I don't know if it was Hannibal. I don't know what was going on.
I don't like the retconning. I don't like the fact that they're going back and interacting with our legendary characters, who, in my opinion, nobody could replace these actors.
I'm not a big fan of that. Even with the movies, I'm not. They don't have that kind of humor, that swagger. It's mimicry at some point.
Chris Pine is Captain Kirk.
No,
if I can play devil's advocate, though, it's like these characters are so great.
I got to throw a bomb in there.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one.
You don't have like Leonard Nimoy anymore, or DeForest Kelley, that can play those characters again, and they are such great characters. So, do we just leave it by the dust heap and just say, okay?
That's why
I would leave it to legend. I would say, we don't need to see these characters.
I thought Zachary Quinto was really good as Spock in the Star Trek. I really enjoyed his, because it was a faithful recreation and it was different enough. But I enjoyed Zachary. I enjoyed the Star Trek reboot. We'll save it for another episode.
Sure, we can talk about that.
We'll go off the rails on that. But as we begin to wind down, there is one interesting other story, is Chekhov. Yeah. And how Chekhov fits in or doesn't fit in with this.
Right.
So a lot has been made where Khan doesn't recognize Terrell in the beginning, but he says, I know you, Chekhov. Yeah. And Chekhov didn't appear in Star Trek until the second season, and Spacey was the first season.
Right.
Yeah.
The reason why this happened is I think it was Nicholas Meyer or Harv Bennett sent Walter Koenig, who plays Chekhov, a copy of the script and said, listen, we don't know a lot about Star Trek. Look over the script and make sure we're getting the terminology right. Like, I think they called it the neutrality zone. And he's like, no, it's the neutral zone. So Walter Koenig kind of went through and looked at the script and gave all the notes. And he said, he goes, I realized that my scene with Khan, I was not in the show yet. He goes, but I didn't put anything in the notes because I was afraid that they wouldn't, not that they would change the lines, but they would just take me out of the scene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He was so good.
Actor.
Yeah.
But a lot of them belong there in the first place. Though.
He spat in the face of Star Trek continuity so he could be in that scene and get the worm.
Do what you got to do. Got to do
residuals, baby. Residuals, baby.
He was probably on the ship though. That he might not have been on the bridge.
Because he's like, as great as George Takei is, I couldn't see Sulu in the scene, so I didn't say anything in the notes. I just left it. Yeah. So they left him in there.
He was really good. I love when he sees the buckle and he's like, Botany Bay. Botany Bay.
Oh no!
And then if you notice when he's when he's brainwashed with that creature, he does the little flickering of the eyelids. I don't know.
He does that.
Next time you watch it,
he's very good.
It's like him fighting it. And I think that was his way of doing it.
He was doing something.
And you can totally argue the fact that he could have been there.
Yeah, he could have been on the ship.
Oh, yeah.
On Strange New Worlds, you got Uhura's on the ship. She was not in that first episode with Pike.
True. Right.
Neither was Chapel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these characters are
or
there.
James Kirk's dad.
Yeah.
Or his brother Sam is on the show.
Yeah.
Not Dean.
Yeah.
Sam Kirk.
That one episode with the pancakes. Remember the parasites, and you see his brother with
Spock in the back
with a mustache.
Yeah.
Got a porn stash back then.
He's on the show as a crew member, which I don't recall him ever being in Starfleet. If you if you follow that continuity, it's a little wacky.
So,
and you know what? Poor Chekhov would get abused again in Star Trek 4.
Right.
He would get hit in the head or whatever, and
he'd fall like a bludgeon.
They were like wheeling him around, right? They're like working, and McCoy's working out. Like that guy can't win for losing. Like he gets the worm in his ear and his blood. I mean, did that guy have hearing loss? Because they didn't address that, and he just came back onto the bridge like, "Hey, do you need some help?" He's like, his ear is like fine. I'm like, dude. Maybe Kirk might be allergic to the eye stuff, but the ear stuff, whatever they did with him, he was ready to rock and roll.
He'll walk it up.
You only had something wrapped around your cerebral cortex that was making you insane. But come on, and you fire the photon.
If only there's a doctor right next to him holding his shoulders. Maybe that would have looked into it.
We'll trust you to fire the photon torpedo. You're not,
I got you. Chekhov, I love you, man. I love you, bro.
So let's go around the table with two questions. We'll start with Roland. Is Star Trek II the best of the series, and what's your favorite scene?
To me, it is the best of the series. Actually, I love the scene for this one is when Kirk goads him to come into the nebula. I think that clicks for me, and it becomes the most dramatic scene. And like Nick was mentioning, it's like a submarine chase. And it's been done before, and it's great the way it was done now. It was in real time. You're literally, it's not jump cuts, nothing. It's just two characters pitted against each other, and they're trying to see who can best each other. And then they even have like a chess piece in the base when they go for it. When Chekhov first gets there, he has like a checker thing. So they're thinking about strategy, but they're simple strategists.
Yeah.
They're very simple strategists. It's checkers, not chess.
It's great.
They would have made a chess piece, a chess game, not checkers. So even that's interesting. So like these little things that come in, but I think that is my favorite scene is that realization.
Sauce for the goose.
Yeah.
Sauce.
That's one vote for Trek 2 is the best in the series. Nick, is it the best in the original Trek movie series? And what's your favorite scene?
I like a lot of Trek movies, but Star Trek 2 is the best. My favorite scene is probably, I love the death of Spock and all that, but probably Khan's his death scene, where he's quoting Moby Dick or whatever. He's like, I spit my last breath at D. I was like, from hell's heart. It's like it's just him.
He relays it
right
on
to the end. And what I like to think is like he died before the Genesis device blew up. So I was like, if Ricardo Montalban was still alive, or now they can digitally do it, I would love to just see like the return of Khan somehow.
Deep fake.
I don't think the Benedict Cumberbatch thing in the new Trek. I didn't think that worked with Khan. It's this great character and just like they just called him Khan. He wasn't Khan. Yeah. He didn't do anything. That was like none. So. But that was a great death scene and a great way to go. So that was my favorite.
Cool. Eric, best of the series?
Best of the series, no doubt. Okay. My favorite scene, God, how do you choose? Probably the scene with probably my favorite scene, which is sort of we already had the scene with McCoy and Kirk in his apartment, but then I love the scene where Kirk seeks out Spock. And he's like, I need your help. I gotta, and him and Spock are going like, you take the ship. No, I don't, it's not necessary. I just get me the regular one, and Spock has to convince him that I got no ego to bruise here. You're clearly the captain of this mission. You belong. He's essentially saying the same thing Bones is saying.
Yeah. You
belong back as in that chair. You're in command here. So I love that. I love that.
Anything else is a waste of material.
That's right. And I would not presume to debate you if that is wise. It's just
command is your first best.
That chemistry between the two is just absolutely
still there.
It's oh my God.
And the three of them is the heart and soul of it. I would go with, I'm going to say Trek 2, although a lot of people might say that Trek 4 is the most accessible Star Trek film because it's the least Star Trekky because they went back in time, so it takes place in modern day. So that one's easy for people to kind of get into. But if you get through that and you're looking for more, I think Trek 2 is really, I think it's the primo episode because that's what it's like. It's got all the best elements of an episode, but really amped up, and they've got time to kind of play in the world and build the characters. I kind of like the Genesis scene only because you get the three of them with Spock, Kirk, and McCoy kind of going, you get to see McCoy do what he does best and be cantankerous and
that's right.
The realist and, and now here comes Genesis,
and watch out.
According to myth, it was in 7 days. Now we can do, he's just overly dramatic, and that's what Spock says. Like, really, Doctor, your emotions are going to,
you must control,
you really should control your emotions, so
they will be your undoing.
Exactly. Like, I'm glad that they were able to write that in because that was so prevalent in the original series of McCoy he can't tolerate the logic. He can't tolerate just the straight facts with no emotion, So I like that they kind of brought that in there and had the scene of the three of them. And it was probably the only scene, but one of the few scenes with the three of them where they were just together like that, because everything else they were kind of in scenes together, but not really interacting in that way. So I kind of dug that one because for me that was like a throwback to the old series and the old style of writing with the bickering. Which you didn't really see
here and there.
And Kirk has this, gentlemen, please. Yeah. For a while, he's got to stop. He's got to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and then McCoy, when they're going to beam into the planet, McCoy's like, well, what if we beam into rock? Is like, Shina's like, well, you'll always get you said you wanted to get away from it all.
Yeah.
So they had those little moments of like the movie was pretty serious throughout, but they had those little moments of levity that they were able to insert in there and just kind of give you some of that even though things are serious, there's always time for that,
right?
Those little things, those little real moments where you're kind of just making an offhanded comment. So
when he goes into the radiation chamber, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no human can survive that. And he's like, you never fail to tell me I'm not human.
Yeah,
right?
As you are. How about that poor bastard that gets that Kirk just like pushes out of the way? I wonder what if that actor is like getting any kind of special royalties for that scene. Like the guy standing on the gantry and Kirk like just shoves him out of the way.
Is that when he comes down the ladder?
Yeah, when he goes down the ladder,
he slides down. He's so cool. He slides down the ladder with his boots on the side, because in one of the earlier scenes you saw like Spock like climb down the ladder and it was like made a big thing out of it, and then Kirk just comes in and like slides down the ladder, it's like he's got to do everything, but even in a death scene, he's got to have like the little flare in there.
That's right. That's right. That physicality.
His uniform had the collar up.
Yeah,
remember when he went to the station?
When they had the jackets,
everybody has had the collar down.
That's right.
He thought it was a little windy because it's a little windy in here.
Well, he's like the Elvis of the group, right? So he had the collar up like Elvis from the 70s.
Little bit.
That Shatner 2000. Wasn't that? That's what it was called, right?
The Shatner 2000.
The Shatner 2000.
Yeah,
that was
TJ Hooker.
I think that was an SNL thing. The Shatner 2000 was the name of it.
Speaking of SNL, did anyone here catch when he says? Spock, are you out of your Falcon mind?
Yeah.
And that's from the SNL bit.
Yeah, from John
years
Belushi.
before. Yeah, with John Belushi.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
How do you
God.
Vulcan
That's
mind?
great.
McCoy says it.
That is great. They brought that into the movie.
Yeah, it's nice to be a little, it doesn't hurt to be a little self-aware.
Right.
As long as it kind of fits in and
a little light. And
circling back on the absurdity of how hammy it was back in the 60s.
Yeah,
and then SNL kind of lampooned it and they brought it back in. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Like I said in the beginning, I'm going to keep shilling the social media, 3324 podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us there. Of course, want to thank the guests. Roland, Uruci, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you back on again.
A pleasure.
Anytime,
I got to admit, I was a little distracted looking at you looking at the Dan Electro guitar next to you. For those on video, when we put it on YouTube, you'll see. Nick Leshi, of course, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us as well.
This is what movie.
So that's going to do it,
about, right?
What's that?
I said this is what movie going is all about.
That's right.
Talking about it and the kind of movies that last 40 years and you can still talk about them like you just saw them fresh for the first time.
Yeah.
So
That's
absolutely,
right.
And we highly recommend. Final word: even if you're not a Star Trek fan, put all that aside and just watch this film. Don't watch the other ones. You actually don't even have to watch. You don't even have to watch the original series, the episode this was based on. Watch this film. Give it 2 hours of your life. Just put all the other notions aside, and I guarantee you'll be compelled by the story. If not, then I was wrong. But that's okay. But that's going to do it for this. So for Roland, for Nick, for Eric, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Cooper. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.